Hey folks, and welcome to They Might Be Racing. Today we are working on a 2008 Dodge Caliber SXT with the 1.8 liter motor. Today what we're doing is swapping the front pads. Rotors are good, so we're just focusing on the pads for today. Tools necessary to do this: first of all, you need to jack up the car. You need to secure it on jack stands. You need to chock behind the wheels, the rear wheels. Put your parking brake on. If it's a manual transmission like this car, put it in first gear or put it in reverse, preferably first gear. And the other things that I have with me are a 9/16 inch wrench, big old C-clamp, I got a bucket, and the new parts. And this is a extraordinarily easy job to do on this particular car. So here's your front caliper. It is held in place with two 9/16 inch bolts. First one knocked loose, second one is down at the bottom. Golly, one's on tight. Sometimes, if you got a tight bolt, it's easier to try tightening a little bit and then loosening it. There we go. That helps bust it loose just to get the threads moving a little bit. So, go ahead and remove these. Now, we're doing the driver's side right now, but obviously when you are changing out brakes, either pads or drums on any vehicle, you always do both sides at the same time. You never do one side. The other thing that I did is I raised the hood and I just cracked open the master cylinder fill lid. That way when we compress the pistons, it relieves the back pressure. Now, this particular vehicle has never had its front pads changed. The driver's very good about not riding brakes. So it is still running OEM brake pads. The easy way to tell this is these 3 points on here. Those are on the OEM pads, they're not on most of the replacements. So once you remove the second bolt, normally if these have been replaced before, you just slide the caliper off. Because of these 3 pins, they actually catch inside the piston. So what you want to do is take your C-clamp and just set it on the back of the caliper. We're going to tighten this up a little bit. And what we're doing is we're pre-compressing the piston. And that will allow the caliper to just sort of float over the points on the brake pad. You don't need to do, super epic, tighten it down a million bits. Just, what I've done here is basically get it so that the caliper is floating a ½ inch out from the pad. And you just lift it off. Take your bucket, set your caliper on there. You never want to let a caliper hang. It always needs to be supported by something. And a lot of times people will take wire and support it from the shock to the strut. I really like just a 5-gallon bucket. It's right there. It's real easy. Just set it on there. And then you slide your old pads out. Now, surprisingly, these pads are still in relatively decent shape, but I've been asked to do her brake shoes, which are not in as good a shape, so we decided we'd just go ahead and do everything at once. So you can see that these still have a fair amount of life on them. When you're looking at a pair of brake pads, what you want to look for is they all have a slot cut in them, and end of life is when you start to get towards the bottom of the slot. These are probably somewhere in between 3/5 and 2/3 used up, so you probably, depending on the the way that she drives, probably got another 3 years on these things. But we're going to go ahead and put new ones on. So here are the new pads. And they're basically, the inner and outer pads are basically identical. But what you want to do is you want to attach the squeaker on the on the interior pad. And what that is this is a brake life minder. Basically, when it gets to the point where you can hear this little guy squeak or squeal, your brakes are done. Rotors here are in great shape. I don't see any scoring. I don't see any uneven wear. You can check them to see if they're thick enough, but I can tell by just looking at these that they are. The caliper floats in here. So once we got the squeaker on, go ahead and inset the new pads. And just as a quick visual, you can see the height difference between the two pads, so new versus old. There, that's all in. If you want to put any of the anti-squeak grease, you can put it on the backs of the pads. Never put anything on the actual pad itself, but on the backs here. Then we're just going to lift that and rotate it back into place. Now sometimes I did not quite compress this piston enough. So what we're going to do is take the old shoes, or the old pads, I'm sorry, set them into the caliper. I'm going to take the C-clamp, now when you're setting a clamp on a caliper like this, you just want to make sure you set it somewhere where you're not going to accidentally damage the caliper. Okay. That's now fully compressed. And this should just pop right on. The other thing you want to look at is the rubber seals in your caliper when you're pulling it off. I'll give you an idea how much life you got left. The rubber on this one is still good. You should get a good long life out of a caliper as compared to a pad or a rotor. And with this, I find it's easier to set the first bolt first. You've got a rubber sleeve right here in between the mount and the caliper. You just have to make sure that the bolt slides through that properly, and do the same down at the bottom. Now it's just a matter of tightening this back up. At this point, just double check that your caliper's still floating a little bit. And what'll happen is that this will sort of reset itself after you hit the brakes a couple times when it's all reassembled. But basically at this point you're done. You've swapped out your pads, everything's ready to go. Up underneath the hood you want to double check your brake fluid level, make sure everything is still kosher. If it is, tighten it up. If not, just add a little brake fluid. Put your wheels back on once you've got both sides, and then put your wheel back on, do the passenger side. Once you've done both the driver's side and the passenger side, put your wheels back on, lug snug, put it back down on the ground, do the final tightening of your lugs, because you can't tighten them all the way in the air, and then go out and take it for a test drive. Take it easy, and then progressively ramp it up, and you should be good. Like I said, this is probably one of the easier pad changes that I've done on just about any car. Realistically, 3 tools. Lug nut wrench, C-clamp, 9/16 inch. You're done.